Good afternoon, everyone. We are slowly admitting those that have registered and signed up for our webinar this afternoon. We are going to get started probably about 3 or 4 after the top of the hour. So we'll wait just a minute to gather everyone is attending. I'm going to go ahead. I've got a poll question prepared for today's conversation. I wanted to go ahead and launch that. So as you see that poll question come through, the question is asking, do you feel supported currently in your menopause journey? Katie and I just want to see what the responses would be relative to how the results are prior to the webinar today. And here at Genève, we just like gathering information just in general. So if you could just take some quick time to, sort of brief time, if you will, to fill out this poll. And in the chat too, if you want to kind of put down some of your thoughts regarding just your current journey, how you feel supported, and we'll go from there. Like I said, we'll get started here in just a minute. Perfect. Someone had asked where everyone is joining in from. We are Genève is represented kind of all over the United States. I live in on the eastern side of the United States, and Katie, you're actually located in Florida, correct?
Yeah, I'm in North Florida.
North Florida, so hunkering down, trying to stay safe and stay dry. I saw Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, for those that are in Florida, definitely. I'm hoping that you are staying safe, staying dry as much as you can be. Hurricane Helene, I believe. I'm definitely getting some rain from that storm, so I cannot imagine being closer to the coast. Awesome. We've had some people join since my last little pre-meeting announcement, but we put a poll question kind of out there just to gather some responses. It's just us asking if you're feeling supported currently in your menopause journey. If you could just take a brief second just to fill that poll out, that would be very helpful. We'll get started here in just a minute. We wanted to wait just another minute longer to let others join who may be coming from another meeting or are attempting to make it. But I am sharing my screen. We got let's make sure we are good to go here. You guys got a brief view at a further slide and some talking points before we were ready to. My apologies. Is everyone able to see? Katie, you're able to see at the very beginning of our slide here. Perfect. Someone had asked where you can find the poll. If you are inside of Teams, whether that is online or whether that is in chat, you should be able to hit the chat button and scroll up to the very beginning of the conversation, and you should see a poll that's listed there. If you're using the Teams app, it would have had a pop-up window where it had essentially posed that particular question. If you aren't seeing that, we will just take even in the chat if you wanted to put down, if you're feeling supported, yes or no, or some variation of that as well. Perfect. Well, we're kind of at the beginning time for our presentation this afternoon. I wanted to go ahead and just do some brief introductions for our speaker today, Katie, and myself. As you can see on the screen, my name is Tyler Rouse. I'm the Senior Account Manager of Partnerships here at Genève, and I am joined by Katie Linville. Katie is a registered dietitian here at Genève. She has 10 years of experience and received both her bachelor's and her master's degree from Florida State University. Katie specializes in nutrition for women's health and has experience supporting women in menopause to optimize mental health as well as their relationship with food and their bodies. Additionally, she holds a specialty certification in oncology nutrition and has experience working with cancer survivors through treatment and for prevention. And in her spare time, Katie enjoys running, hiking, and spending time at the beach with her family. I can relate, Katie. I feel like I enjoy running and hiking and spending time at the beach with my family as well. I enjoy that. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up our agenda, kind of what we're talking through today. And right before I do turn it over to Katie for today's talk and conversation, just wanted to give a few webinar need to knows. For the webinar itself, we will ask that everyone remains muted. I will keep you muted, but if you could just go ahead and just be cognizant of that, just remain muted for today's conversation. And then for our presentation today in and of itself. If you have a particular question, or a topic brings up a talking point that you'd like to elaborate on further, or you just have questions, let's leave that for the chat. So if you could just put any of your questions into the chat itself, we're going to gather those for the conclusion of the webinar. We will save about 20 minutes at the end to go through any of those questions relative to today's topic, or how we could get you set up with creating a Genev account and experiencing what we have to offer. So again, just if you could just please stay muted during the duration of the talk. And from there, Katie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and I'll go off camera and let you get started.
Thank you, Tyler. Excited to be joining today for this meeting. And I have been at Genev since 2020, so 4+ years, and I've had just the amazing experience of being able to meet with many patients over the years, at least over 100. And some of those patients I have a one-off meeting with, while others longer support of 2 to 3 years, even, where we have multiple appointments, sometimes every 2 to 3 weeks. So everyone's journey is different. And so, I want to open it up to say, really, our goal at Genev is to provide evidence-based care while we support those going through the menopause transition. We want to make it normal and okay to talk about menopause. And we feel that there's been a lack of support, a lack of awareness and education in this space. And so we want to change that, essentially. And so love to be able to be part of that mission and that journey. As you can see here, this slide really highlights some facts about Genev as a whole. We are the largest national menopause provider. We do have over 50 care providers in our space and serve all 50 states virtually. We have had many people fill out what we call our menopause assessment, which is essentially a set of questions that people will fill out to assess where are they in their menopause journey. Are they perimenopausal, premenopausal, postmenopause, along with guidance and resources that can potentially help them navigate where to go to receive support. We also have several resources that we have created and collaborated with to help supporting education guidance along the way as we work with our patients. And, we also are, we always make sure to have diversity, equity, inclusion as part of our care. That is a highlight we have every single employee at Genev go through. So to touch on a few key points here, our clinical outcomes and patient experience. We are very proud of our Net Promoter Score of 97. Really what that is after a patient meets with us, they're sent a survey and they're asked several different questions. How did that appointment feel for you? Did you feel supported? Are you feeling change or improvement in your symptoms so far? Different questions like that. And love this call out that we have found 89% of our patients see some level of symptom improvement over the course of working with us. Maybe that's even after appointment 1, or it could be a few appointments down the road. We have a high patient utilization, which this essentially means how often are patients meeting with us per year. We have, on average, folks meeting with us about 7 times. This does vary, of course, person to person. I know as part of the dietitian team, we often see people much more than that. I mean, ideally, we're meeting with folks every 2 to 3 weeks over the course of a few months. And so that number can be much higher. One thing that does, I believe, set us apart quite a bit is this integrated care model that we have as part of our field here. So in the Genev space, we have virtual OBGYNs who specialize in menopause. We also have our registered dietitian team. Currently, we have 9 of us, and we're constantly growing, changing, evolving. We are also virtual and specialize in menopause. And then we provide health coaching, as you can see in that bullet point below. We have obesity and weight management specialty doctors as well, who are board certified. We've actually recently launched a weight management program because we know that that is an area of support a lot of folks are looking for. So I'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But that program works with both our dietitians and our doctors. We have the ability to refer out as needed. Behavioral health, that's a huge need that we see. Sometimes we may meet with someone who may need a higher level of support as they are working through mental health. And so we're able to refer to a company called LifeStance that's within our network. And they are also virtual, or mostly virtual, I believe. And lastly, we have the opportunity to refer to patients to meet with a in-person doctor if needed. Perhaps they need some testing or physical exams. So we really want to look at the whole picture here on how to best support the patient. And one other note is that we're able to communicate with these various providers. I often talk with our gen ed doctors, and we collaborate. So, and then as you can see on the last part of this page, we are always looking to expand our healthcare coverage. We really want to make our program, our space as accessible as possible. So currently we're in network with Aetna, United, Emblem Health. There's much more in the works. We're constantly looking to expand on that piece. Next slide. So this slide, as you can see, lists several different symptoms. And as you can see here, we note that these are common menopause symptoms that Genev typically treats. So we hear about these things every single day as we meet with our patients. Some of these symptoms may sound familiar, or we may associate with menopause, right? Hot flashes, night sweats. We traditionally hear about those symptoms, but there may be others on this list that may be surprising that they could be connected with menopause or perimenopause. Gastrointestinal changes and bloating, uh, brain fog, joint pain, mood changes. That's very, very common. And I will say often I have folks come in and say, is there something wrong with me? Why is this happening? Could there be a connection with menopause? We're able to support them and talk through those different areas. I would say on the dietitian team, where we're supporting the most would be in the weight changes section. Sleep, sleep can often be interfered with, and we can talk through strategies for that. Mood, we hear that a lot, and we are able, like I mentioned earlier, to refer to mental health providers as needed. But I also hear a lot about fatigue, brain fog, and joint pain, along with the GI changes. So next slide. So let's talk a little bit more on what menopause is as a whole, or what does this whole spectrum look like? What can we expect? So first of all, many reasons why you may be experiencing the changes in your body that you are during this time. And it's just not a one size fits all approach. Menopause looks so different for every single person. And so if you think about when we might see symptoms start to happen, that will very much depend on a lot of different factors. Sometimes women in their late 30s will start experiencing very early perimenopause symptoms that we might not tie into the fact that, hey, this could be perimenopause related or hormonal related. And oftentimes you may talk with your doctor about that, and they may say, oh, not yet. You're not, at that phase of life yet where menopause would be happening, but it is a possibility. There are cases where menopause may happen earlier than even late 30s, but that would be a very rare medical situation. I often hear folks in their early 40s start to really have symptoms. That's what I tend to notice. In that previous slide we just looked at, a lot of those symptoms may crop up. Late 40s is when a lot of women are in the thick of perimenopause and really are looking for support, for understanding, trying to understand what's going on. And menopause itself, we define that as when it's been a full year of having no period. And so then menopause itself is one day, we say, right, of that day that it's been a year that you've had no period. And then the next day is postmenopause. But, as a whole, we consider it menopause. And there are also situations where you may enter menopause surgically. You may have a hysterectomy and ovaries may be removed or not. And you may be entering that in your early 40s, later in your 50s. It looks different for everyone. But the takeaway is that the shift in hormones during this menopause transition is what can really create a chaotic environment physically in the body compared to the premenopause phase. I often hear things do level out with time, but it again, it's different for everyone and it does take time. So another key piece here is that lifestyle habits that may be worked before hormones started going all over the place are no longer effective. So therefore it might require a shift in approach to support your changing body. And really the focus here is quality of life. We're looking to boost your quality of life, having you feel good and well and supported, so you are not just surviving but you're thriving. So let's go to the next slide and I can talk through more on the dietitian side of things. So like I just mentioned, how can you go from surviving to thriving when you feel like your life has just completely been upended at some points with symptoms? That is where our Geneve menopause dietitian team can come in. But also the doctors, right? And we'll touch on that too. But our dietitians, during that initial session, we're meeting with a patient and we're listening. We're listening to their experience. We're creating a space for you to be seen, heard, supported. And even that alone sometimes can make you feel better in the moment. Just having someone who is there to listen, understand, and to validate that what you're experiencing is normal and okay, and that you're not the only one going through it. Because most people don't get to have menopause conversations every day like we do. So we know that a lot of these symptoms may be considered normal, but others, if you're not talking with others about it, you might not know. So that is part of what we initially kick our appointments off with. Next slide. This highlights more specifically what it would be like to work with a registered dietitian. So our initial session is about 50 minutes long, 50. And again, in that session, we're gathering a lot of information. We're hearing your experience. We are reviewing past medical history, and we're hearing what your goals are. What is your focus? If it's a weight management goal, we want to hear your experience with weight as a whole, what you've tried, what your frustrations are. And like I had previously mentioned, we did launch this a weight management program in which you can schedule with one of our dietitians. We talk through a really supportive plan with nutrition, exercise and movement, other lifestyle factors like sleep support, stress management, because as you may know, when sleep is off, it's going to be very hard and very challenging to work on exercise, right? Or to think about what we're eating. So all of these things can plan together. And so when the team, when you meet with one of us on our team, if it is weight management related, you also have the option now to meet with one of our physicians that specializes in weight management support. So happy to answer any questions that come up about that and what that could look like. But we're really excited about that offering and that we're able to bring that to the table as well. With some other key points working with a dietitian, you have unlimited texting communication with us between appointments. So after our initial appointment, the longer visit, we will schedule a follow-up. And this does vary on what might work best for the individual, because we always want to personalize this to what works best for each person. But typically we'll schedule with folks every 2 to 3 weeks or so. And in between, we're available for check-ins. We have a HIPAA compliant texting system in which you can message us and ask anything that may come to mind related to your plan. We also go out of our way to ask questions on your end for accountability and say, how is this going? What's working well this week and what's not? What challenges are coming up for you? With meal, snack, and recipe recommendations, like you see at that top bullet point, this is definitely something we want to touch bases on. As dietitians, this is our passion, nutrition. We are full of recipe ideas. We've got lots of meal and snack ideas for you, and so again, that will look different for each person. But what we typically do is set up your plan for the week. We're not handing you a meal plan, but we are guiding you as you work through to create, what is your plan for breakfast, lunch, dinner throughout the week. Next slide. So navigating the Genève patient journey, here is a example case study. And so you can see this patient, Allison, she is struggling with weight gain, hot flashes, also anxiety. And, this has been part of her experience that's gone on for a while. And luckily, she was able to find Genève. And as she started reading through things, completing the menopause assessment, she realized that some of her symptoms may be related to these hormonal changes. So she was able to schedule an appointment with one of our physicians for telehealth. And on that initial appointment, the doctor was able to review the patient's menopause assessment, also provide medical diagnosis and guidance. Does she need to see an in-person doctor for evaluation? Um, they do a mental health screening. May she benefit from meeting with a psychologist or a therapist? Might she benefit from a medication prescription? They are able to prescribe, and there are options for her. So that's the initial appointment. And then around that time, shortly after, she would meet with a dietitian, and we would cover, okay, weight gain is part of your story. Let's talk through your plan. I hear you're having hot flashes. Let's talk through some potential hot flash triggers. How can we get you feeling better? And like I mentioned, we'll meet every 2 to 3 weeks. For most people, what we find is that they notice feeling a lot better within about 3 months or so. That will vary, obviously, but that 3 month time frame tends to be uh, a balance of, I can see and feel a significant difference in how I'm feeling and as I work toward my goals and to feel well. And so then follow up for the doctor as time goes on. We want you meeting with the doctor every 3 to 4 months for evaluation. This is particularly if you're on a prescribed medication that they prescribed you. They're looking for, is this prescription a good fit? Has it helped you? Has it helped manage your symptoms? Also, yeah, where are you at with your symptoms? What else should we discuss, talk about, and treat? And if clinically indicated, they may refer to an in-person OBGYN as well. And so that is our typical journey here. And again, we are able to communicate with the doctors. We can communicate with LifeStance, which is our behavioral health company we work with, and provide that whole person care. We have a patient services team who's also on the back end working to make sure the patient has the best experience possible in all of these routes. Okay, next slide. This touches a little bit more on lifestyle strategies. This would be more on the work we do as the dietitians. So I'll talk through the pieces in more detail. Nutrition, so meal planning support, including recipe ideas and nutrition recommendations. So nutrition recommendations, we're going to hear first, what does nutrition look like for you? How are things going? How do you feel things are going? What are your goals in particular? Perhaps if you have a goal of balancing blood sugar levels, we can help you with that, right? We can provide guidance on ideal portion sizes, how much carbohydrate to eat, what does balance of protein, fat, and carb look like for you? And here's some recipe ideas that would fit in that. In those recommendations, here's some resources to understand what a carbohydrate is or which foods contain carbohydrates. So again, that's very specific and individualized for the person. When it comes to physical activity, again, we meet the person where they're at. There's a lot of considerations here. We really, ideally, we want you to be active. Cardio is a wonderful exercise, walking in particular for stress management and all the things. But we also know that strength training tends to be very supportive as we age because our muscle mass is naturally declining with age. And so what we want to do is prioritize muscle building. And nutrition wise, we focus on protein there. And exercise wise, strength training if possible. And there's always talk around, is this safe for you? Is this good for you? What would be a good start? Do we need your doctor to sign off and say, this is okay for you? Right. So, again, we want to do this in a way that will be supportive and not work toward injury or anything like that. So, we can help you get set up with a strength training plan, a cardio plan, a balance of all of those things. And so, we also have a couple of dietitians on our team that are exercise physiologists as well. So take this a step further and really dive deep there. When it comes to supplements, I am very passionate about supplements. What to take, what not to take. There's so much on the market, and it's hard to know, is this a good quality supplement? Should I take this? Should I not take this? And I mean, even beyond your standard nutrition supplements, beyond a multivitamin, beyond, a B complex or a vitamin D, there's menopause targeted supplements. You will see probiotics saying that, hey, if you take this, you will lose weight. Which, disclaimer, under my research, I have not seen that taking a supplement like that alone will work. But questions like, should I take a probiotic? What brand is good to take? We can provide all of that information because we look at supplements that are third party tested, meaning that they have undergone rigorous testing that the FDA does not do for supplements. And so we can guide you there. We also tend to want to look at your medical history and your labs, or know about your labs, to see if a supplement may be indicated. For example, if you are a cancer survivor and you're still meeting with an oncology team, I want you to go back to your doctor and share that you're interested in taking a certain supplement before starting it. So we look at the big picture here when it comes to supplements. When it comes to sleep, so this one is so tricky. One of the most common things I hear about sleep during perimenopause and postmenopause is really that I don't have trouble falling asleep, but I have trouble staying asleep. I, am able to get to sleep, and then around 2 or 3 in the morning, I'm waking up and I'm up for an hour or longer. And this is just, a constant pattern. And so we're able to really talk through those pieces as well. Let's do some trial and error. What might work, what might not. We can even talk supplements on that. In some cases, people truly have insomnia, and there are options that we can guide you to for potential help there. There's something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, for example. And I just saw a question come through. I know we're waiting to the end for most of these, but how can you get sleep and feel well rested? I believe that's what it said. And that honestly is a wonderful question, because that can be very challenging. It can take some time to find the right fit for you on what you need to do. In some cases, I need to hold firm to a bedtime routine. My body is not as resilient as it used to be. And so I can't just stay up till midnight. I've got to go to bed earlier. I've got to do all of these things, at least for now, until things level out, to prioritize sleep as much as possible. And so I have seen folks be able to improve sleep over time. And again, it varies person to person on what will help. Some people do find certain supplements helpful, like magnesium glycinate, for example. Other people say that doesn't help at all, and so it really just depends, and routine depends too. But again, that's something we meet, like when we meet during session, we'll ask you lots of questions around that. What time do you have to get up in the morning? What time could you go to bed at night? What are the possibilities here? Do you need to space out when you're eating dinner? Is that interfering? What's coming up for you? So it really varies very much. And then with the stress management and mindfulness piece here, this one's big too. We are all constantly, as humans, just faced with a lot of stress. But if you think about midlife, when a lot of people may be in the sandwich generation of you're raising kids and you're taking care of your parents as they're getting older. It's enormously stressful. You have your career, you have a lot going on. And so we talk through all of that. What are you doing for stress management? And in fact, whenever folks come in to meet with us for the first time, we have them fill out an assessment so that we can gain a good understanding of their experience before we even meet with them. And we say, what would you rate your stress level and what are your stress management techniques? And sometimes people don't have any, right? And other times people may say exercise, walking or talking to a friend or medication. There's a wide variety there. But we can talk through some lifestyle techniques that could improve quality of life. That big, again, that call out, what we're wanting to do is improve your quality of life. That's our goal at the end of the day. Move from survive to thrive mode. So I think that's all I had on my end. I'll hand it over to
Yeah,
Ty.
that's great. Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate you taking some time to walk through all of our slides and give us a lot of information. I think it's important to talk about these particular types of things relative to sleep management, which I could use some help with. For different reasons, of course. I've got young ones at home, still managing
So
that.
tough.
But
Yeah.
it's the conversations that are important to have, important to bring up. So I appreciate you taking some time. So we're at the point now where I just wanted to kind of briefly talk through some next steps related to not only our webinar today, but just how you interact with Genev moving forward here in the future. So if you enjoyed the webinar and you enjoyed the kind of the talking points that Katie mentioned, and you think to yourself, I would love to this for this to be specific to me. We can offer that with Katie or with one of our other wonderful RDNs. And you can do that by simply just going to genev.com. When you go to genev.com, and I'll go ahead and just make it easy for all of you and put that link right there in the chat. When you go to genev.com, you can go ahead and create an account. You're able to create an account. You'll have a dashboard where you can sign up and put in your insurance information to look for an OBGYN appointment and also a appointment with their RDN, and it'll look over where you're located. So you'll need to, of course, put in your address and other relevant information. And from there, I will be able to give you an appointment date and time. Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but we still are running with a 3 to 5 day, 3 to 5 business day turnaround time for most OBGYN appointments and about a 5 to 7 day business day turnaround time for RDN appointments still. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And so when you compare that to most brick and mortar experiences these days, that is drastically shorter amount of time. I think we're seeing upwards of 7, 8, 9 months for OBGYN appointments specifically. And RDN models, a lot of those are starting to become more virtual because of that ease of access. And so definitely check out our website. We've got articles here, as you can see some screenshots. We do have articles on our website relative topics, culturally relevant topics amongst a wide variety of things. So if you could just take some time, go check our website out. We'd love to have a visit with you. And then from there, like I promised, we'll have about 20 minutes to help answer any of your questions that have come through the chat. I was looking through the chat, saw about a few pop up during the conversation. Katie, this one kind of goes back to kind of the earlier part of your presentation where you were talking about the different stages of menopause, and someone was just curious on the difference between menopause and postmenopause, and then they had kind of wanted to elaborate further about how do you tell which stage you're in.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so sometimes when we talk about menopause, we are thinking of the whole experience, right? Like I'm in menopause, whether it be peri or post or the day of menopause. But how we define menopause is essentially it's been one full year of having no period. And that one day we would call technically menopause. Now, there are certain cases where it would be hard to know, am I actually in menopause now? Am I in postmenopausal? Have I hit that one, year period mark, if you're on any type of oral contraceptive or IUD, anything like that, or maybe it's you've had a hysterectomy but still have ovaries, it might be hard to know. Some doctors can do testing and look at lab values, but sometimes it can be hard to truly say. But in general, we consider technically the term menopause as the day to the year that you've had no period, and then after that it's postmenopause. And then to talk through some of the different stages, I'll elaborate on that a bit more too, actually. So before you start seeing hormonal change in relation to, you know, menopause related hormonal change, we would consider you premenopausal. So that could be, the time of life where perhaps you're having children, things like that. Um, Usually, teens, 20s, 30s. And then the next piece to this is perimenopause. And to me, there's multiple stages of perimenopause. There can be early perimenopause, and you don't have to know exactly where you fit, but sometimes it's good to visualize, what am I experiencing? Um, Early menopause or early perimenopause, I would say, is where you start to notice, okay, things seem a bit off here. Like I can tell things are starting to shift. I don't know what that is. Oftentimes, people will realize or recognize, hey, perimenopause started for me years ago, when they come and talk to me in late perimenopause when symptoms have really revved up. And they'll say, actually, this has been going on 4 or 5 years. So yeah, once you enter late perimenopause, I always tend to say that seems to be the worst of the worst symptoms wise for most folks. Um, and then as time levels out, menopause, postmenopause, things do settle down, but it can vary, and it takes years in some cases to see a leveling out. Part of that is related to the changes in estrogen. So, as women, our bodies are running on estrogen the majority of our lives. We're having a really high level of estrogen. And so, as that starts to dip and decline, our body responds in several different ways. We have estrogen receptors all over our bodies, our brain, everywhere. And so, when that estrogen is not at the same level that it always was, these symptoms really start to crop up.
That's helpful. Someone, when you were describing that, Katie, someone had asked at what stage are symptoms the worst, and I think you had called out perimenopause are typically the time period where the symptoms could be a little bit more elevated than they might be in a different stage. Did I hear you say that correctly?
Yes, and I would even specify it more to even late perimenopause, more so too. And
Hmm.
random, I hear a lot of people who are around age 47 telling me things are really bad, right? And of course it varies, but and the average age of menopause is around 51 for most people.
Understood. Thank you for that insight. The next question was kind of centering around cyclical HRT. Someone had asked, do Genev prescribers work with cyclical HRT?
That's a great question. I don't personally prescribe, as you know, as a dietitian. Our doctors do, and what I commonly see is that they may. It depends on where you're at in your journey. But if they're going to prescribe hormone therapy, oftentimes I'll see them prescribe the patch, but not always. Sometimes it's the pill. Um, and then they'll do cyclical progesterone, where they'll do, you take progesterone only part of the month, but you continue with the patch all of the time. So it really varies and depends depending on your symptoms and experience.
Yeah, I think it's important to call out too on that particular type of question. That's where it would be very important when you have a conversation with an OBGYN. And so that's, meeting with one of our OBGYNs and having a conversation around HRT if it makes sense for you in your particular stage. So for those of you that, heard that question and were curious, how does that relate to me, or would that fit in line with maybe my need? I would recommend setting up an appointment with us. I think that's a conversation that you deserve to have with one of our OBGYNs and get that level of insight that they would be able to provide.
Well said. I wanted to throw one more thing in there around that.
Yeah.
Another amazing thing about meeting with our doctors is you don't have to just meet with them for a prescription. They will talk through your experience with you. That's one amazing thing about those meetings. If you're curious and maybe want a prescription or maybe don't, they can talk you through the whole thing, and they're not expecting that they will absolutely write one if you don't want it. So
Yeah. That's good. I was kind of smiling here because you had brought up 47, 48 kind of being that age, and the chat kind of popped up a little bit relative to making some comments about 47 to 48 has been awful. I'm 48, and hot flashes alone are horrible, and someone talking through anxiety and just different comments around that age. So it's interesting to me that you called out that age specifically, Katie, and the chat seems to agree. I wanted to kind of circle back very briefly again, just kind of focusing in on HRT. And I will, give the disclaimer: we can't give individual medical advice or a recommendation in this particular type of setting. We would say you'd need to have an appointment because your journey and your as a patient, there's particulars we can't talk about, right? So, with that said, this individual had just asked around examples of supplements that might be recommended if HRT is not an option.
So if hormone therapy is not an option, luckily there's a new medication on the market that could be an option if you, for example, are a cancer survivor who can't take estrogen, called Veoza. So that's one thing that the doctor could talk about. Supplement wise, it's a tricky thing, and I'm hesitant to throw anything out considering not knowing an individual's past medical history, things like that. Um, but in general, with sleep support, I mean, not sleep support, nutrition support, what we're looking for is, are there nutrient gaps in your diet? Might you need some additional magnesium at night for support with sleep? Could black cohosh help you with your hot flashes potentially? That's not as strong as hormone therapy, but is that an option for you there? So there are a few different things for that, and you'll see things on the market like estrogen, and I have heard that work well for some people. Again, I want you to have a conversation even with our doctor before starting anything like that first, just since it can potentially have a big impact, and we want to make sure there's not any medication interactions and that type of thing.
Absolutely. That's where, as a patient, having those historical conversations where you talk through what you've taken in the past, or maybe something that you have had recommended to you in the past, so our doctors are aware when they are meeting with you and what they're prescribing. I also have heard Dr. Rebecca Dunsmore Sue is the chief medical officer here at Genève, and I've heard her mention magnesium as well as additional support. So interesting that you brought that up as well, Katie. Um, One other individual here, and just another reminder too. Please don't. This is the time for getting your questions in. So please don't hesitate to add your questions as they come up. We'll try and make time for those as they come in. So keep asking. This is the time to do so. So Katie, this individual is wondering: is there any help for low libido or painful sex if HRT is not an option?
Yes, and our doctors, they love to talk about it, and they have lots of guidance here. So painful sex, there are several lubricant options. um there's also a book that I believe Dr. Savage always refers to, and maybe Dr. Rebecca as well. A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex, I think that's what it's called. Has a lot of guidance. Now, there are even medical treatment options. And again, I keep referring to the doctors because they're the ones who guide all of this. There's something called the Mona Lisa touch that I've heard of. And so, yes, there are options for you. There's even topical estrogen or insert estrogen that targets the specific area to it, so it's not systemic, so your estrogen, it's not estrogen going all over, around your body. It's just for helping the particular area. And in some cases even breast cancer survivors, are they can take like a topical estrogen, things like that. So there are many options for you.
That's great. And Katie, you had made a book recommendation, and ironically enough, Dr. Savage and I had a conversation last week about that.
Oh
And
wow.
so I,
Yeah,
I plugged that book.
good.
It's titled "A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex" by Lori Mintz, and I tagged. I unfortunately don't have a link to the book, so this you'll have to go to your local bookseller or somewhere else. But I did go ahead and in the chat put the the book title and the author's name. So if you some are curious on that conversation, definitely take advantage of that. One thing based off of that particular question and just kind of thinking on our lifestyle support in general during this phase of life, one question I like to ask during our webinar series here is from my point of view, as a spouse of a woman who's going through perimenopause, what recommendations, Katie, would you have for those that are listening here and want their spouses to be more supportive, more, maybe even more engaged? Like, what would you say to me as someone, how could I be more supportive to my spouse? And in turn, like, how do those conversations come out? How do you make suggestions for those that you see when they're needing a little bit more help at home?
Yeah, I mean, I love to hear that, right? And we have had husbands or spouses come and ask, how can I support, right? Which is amazing. I think the biggest thing is listening and trying to just provide that listening ear and acknowledge that you can't understand, right? Your body is not going through this. And there are some times in life where we have a hard time understanding things if we haven't gone through it ourselves. And just to know this is very difficult, this is very challenging, and a little support, extra support is needed right now, right? Listen, acknowledge. I think those are some of the biggest things, and educate yourself, on the experience, what to expect, what might happen, what might not. That would be an amazing as a supportive partner to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think probably the word that stood out to me the most is listening, and I think that's a really empowering word in just in and of itself. Just slowing down, listening, being attentive too, because there's those that listen and then those that are attentively listening. So I appreciate that insight. Someone had, and I can answer this question, Katie, but someone had asked, I went online and was starting to set up an appointment. Is there one that is recommended to start with, or just set up all three if they all apply to me?
Great.
Um, I would say whatever you feel comfortable with. If you are applicable and you feel like all three would apply to you, I would say take the plunge, take the step forward to get some care and get in front of our doctors and our RDNs, both from the weight management and lifestyle support. Is that what you'd suggest, Katie, or do maybe you have something else that you'd like to add?
And so it depends on specifically what your focus is. So if it is, hey, menopause is a beast right now, I want to talk hormone therapy, or what are my options? Maybe schedule with the doctor first. You don't have to. You can schedule with us first if you want, but get that doctor appointment set up, and then you can also schedule with the dietitian. And what I like about that model is, as a dietitian, I get to see the doctor's notes on what they suggest and recommend. And then we can refer to them and work with them too. If it's weight management, schedule with the dietitian first. That's what we want. And that's the pathway that we're trying to create, so that we can set you up to talk about lifestyle and then refer you to the doctor as needed too.
Perfect. Thank you. So I wanted to move on to kind of going back to sleep support. That seems to be a very prevalent talking point for today. I think in general for today's webinar, but just for lifestyle support, sleep's a vital piece of that. Someone had asked, what natural nutrition would you recommend for sleep support?
I've dug really deep into this, and because I'm like, okay, what are some melatonin rich foods, right? Or magnesium rich foods? Um, it gets a bit complicated as far as those pieces go. Um, Tart cherries have some melatonin, some melatonin naturally. But I look at supplements more typically. But we also want to look at the pattern of how you're eating. So if dinner is your largest meal of the day, which it typically is for most of us here in the US, because it's set up around having that meal with your family sometimes at the end of the day. I mean, it's just, that's how we have things set up a lot of the time. If you're having, a lot of higher fat content, or just a lot of food at once, maybe alcohol, all of those things could potentially be impacting your sleep. Is it causing any type of reflux symptoms that you're going to be dealing with right before bed? GI upset? We know alcohol in general can be interfering for sleep. So, what is that looking like? And then a pattern of eating that would be most supportive for sleep. eating every 3 to 4 hours, having balance of good protein, healthy fats, fiber, rich carbohydrates like fruit, sweet potatoes, squash, those types of things, whole grains. Um, so we're looking for balance. We don't want too much of any one thing. And we don't want to overload our system as well. So that would be my long answer, but I think in a session it would be very much tailored to the individual, so we could dive deeper there.
Perfect. Yeah. Again, yet another plug for getting an appointment set up with our Genev team. We highly recommend it. So someone had called out about one of our first slides was indicating some skin and hair issues being listed on the symptoms page. This individual had just asked, like, what exactly have you seen? Extremely dry scalp, itchy all over body, odd blemishes, not really the young person acne. I think their question was like, are those particular signs? So that does seem like a unique or specific to the individual type question, but maybe from a broad stroke kind of approach, Katie, to answering that, are there any more specifics on skin or skin blemishes or skin issues or hair issues that you might be able to talk through?
Yeah, we have a wonderful article on this very topic because we've had a lot of those questions. What is considered normal? What should I seek support from a dermatologist on? And so we do see a lot of dryness coming up. That is very common. Brittle nails sometimes it's hair thinning, maybe in one particular spot or all over, maybe facial hair growth. We see some of that happening, and all of this is considered somewhat normal. Um, if it's sunspots, I would say that's more age related typically. If it's something that we flag as a concern of like, oh, that doesn't sound so normal, we would refer you to meet with a dermatologist to double check, right? Is this something that they could help address? And oftentimes that's the case. Um, and this wasn't part of the question, but just to throw this out there from a nutrition perspective, prioritize protein. That can be very helpful. Take a good quality multivitamin or B complex if that applies to you to support yourself in that way, and hydrate. And then omega 3s, healthy fatty acids, is really helpful for those things as well.
That's really interesting. Someone had made a comment just about their hair being curlier than before, and that kind of got me thinking. Could hair texture, or even if someone was straight hair and turning curly, like, are those types of things that maybe someone could be keeping an eye on as relative to a hair change?
I think with hormonal change in general, a lot can change. Hair can change. I mean, and thinking about in pregnancy, things like that. I've heard a lot of women say, my hair changed or this changed or yeah. So actually there's a lot of possibilities. I don't know that we can say for sure, hey, that's definitely from menopause, right? Or one particular thing, but in general, hormone changes alone can be tied in to so many different pathways, whether it be hair changes like that, or maybe even the first time you're noticing an autoimmune condition. Um, so yeah, it's pretty wild the
Right.
impact that hormones can have.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important to call out, like, as we get the topic of menopause as we move into the month of October. October is World Menopause Month, and those particular talking points, and just in the conversation around menopause, as it becomes more culturally relevant for people maybe that they didn't think about talking about it publicly before. Like, these are the type of conversations and the questions that the Genev team here are they're very passionate about. That's what our team shows up every single day to help the women that we meet with on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. And there's patient story after patient story where I think we've got a statistic these days that says 89% of patients that come see us here at Genev are stating that they have symptom improvement after just one visit. And that is a number that we pull on. It's something that we are keep track of. And it's a number for us that just quantifies that the individuals that see us are feeling heard, they're feeling seen. It's not that I usually kind of label it as this box, and the experience has been, well, it's a symptom that I've heard represented before in the past, and we're just going to put you in this box, and here you go. We're really taking the time. Our team is really taking the time to make sure you feel heard, that you feel seen, that you're getting the level of care that you deserve. And so, I really do appreciate all of the questions here that have come in. And, before I ask maybe two more questions to kind of cap us off, I did want to go ahead and just make a plug. I am going to be adding another poll question into the chat. So if you could just go ahead and take just a brief second to give us your feedback. This particular poll question just says, I feel more knowledgeable about menopause after attending today's session. We've got highly agree all the way down to highly disagree. And so if you could just give us your feedback in that particular poll, again, it helps us improve our webinar experience, making sure that, that people that do attend are able to get the most out of it. Awesome. Well, back to our regular scheduled program, to answering some questions here. Let's see here. I'm just kind of going through. I think I see one question here. Talking about OTC omega-3 supplements, do you have any recommendations in that arena? Is kind of like a broad, or would that be more of a specific, like unique to the person type answer?
So for omega-3, I'm telling you, I love talking nutrition supplements. I'm very passionate about it. So if you can eat 2 servings of cold water fish per week, ideally think about salmon, something, the smaller fish that have less mercury, anchovy, sardines, halibut has some. Tuna is great, but we want to think about the mercury content. But if you can have 2 3-ounce servings of cold water fish per week, that's the best way to get your omega-3. For a lot of us, that's not very realistic, and we do want to consider a supplement for that reason. And so 1,200 milligrams total. I know that's very specific, of omega-3 with a good quality amount of EPA and DHA. I really like Nordic Naturals Ultimate Omega. That does meet that need, but we also at Genève have an omega-3 supplement that meets that guideline as well. There are many supplements on the market that don't have a whole lot of it. And so those are a couple brand recommendations I would recommend.
Awesome. I think probably for our last question, to stay on this particular type of topic, you're talking about supplements. Someone had asked in regards to, does Genève, do we have dietitians who support whole food, plant-based diets?
Oh, absolutely. We tend to like to take the food first approach. And so that is always where we want to start. We want to start with, how can we get you feeling better from the nutrition perspective with food first, right? And with that in mind, we love Mediterranean anti-inflammatory style of eating. There's a lot of research to back up that that's very supportive for midlife and beyond. And so that may be where we start and talk about. It's definitely possible to be fully plant-based vegetarian and meet your needs too. And so we work on a lot of different scales there.
That's perfect. Thank you. Fantastic. Well, that concludes today's webinar and our conversation today around just lifestyle support and menopause. I just wanted to, again, Katie, just thank you for taking some time to speak with us and kind of address some of the questions that came through both during the webinar and afterwards. Just so all of you know, we do record this session, and we will send out a link to the YouTube recording of this particular webinar, so you can not only watch it again when you're needing a little bit of encouragement, or just a question that was posed got you thinking and you want to come back and hear it again. Or if you've got a friend or a family member that's also going through this and you want them to feel supported, and or at least just help them feel seen and heard of themselves, share this with them. We'll get that email sent out within the next 24 hours, hopefully. Depending upon YouTube, I do the recordings and then I go ahead and upload it, but we'll get that out as promptly as possible. And again, thank you for taking some time out of your Wednesday afternoon to meet with us wherever you are located. We hope that you stay safe. And for those kind of in the path of Hurricane Helene, hope you stay safe and stay dry. Have a great rest of your day and a good rest of your week. Take care.